Will the city postpone water, sewer, and garbage rates again? How many hours are we getting billed for by the city attorney? We'll consider those and other questions as we do the September 21st, 2021 meeting agenda overview. Greetings, everyone. This is the Gardening Snail of Livingston, California, just trying to keep the community informed and local government as honest as possible. Open session is scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. and you can attend by teleconference by calling 605-468-8002, access code number 156811#. Public comments can be submitted via email at citycouncil@livingstoncity.com. Comments must be received by 2 p.m. on the day of the council meeting. You will need to provide meeting date, item number, name, email, and comment. Please limit to 300 words or 3 minutes. Please include public comment in the subject for the email. I've been hearing rumbles about emails not being received or not being read, so you might want to follow up with a phone call to City Hall. Under closed session, conference with Labor Negotiation about all employee bargaining groups, and conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases. Regular meeting begins with the call to order, pledge of allegiance, moment of silence, roll call to see who's here and who's not, and closed session announcements. Also, changes to the agenda, just in case someone might want, say, items that are on the consent calendar pulled out for separate discussion. Citizens' comments, notice where it says comments are normally limited to 3 minutes, followed by announcements and reports. Then comes the consent agenda for those items that are supposed to be routine and non-controversial. Number 1, waiving of reading of ordinance and resolutions. I have no idea why this is on the consent calendar because I haven't found the staff report yet. Ratified check warrants, that's pretty normal for the consent calendar, although I do have a question about one of the checks. Ratified contract for the sidewalk repair on Main and D Street, that could be fairly straightforward. Awarded contract for the 2021 slurry seal project. I'd like to know a little bit more about those projects and where they're going to take place. Second reading and adoption of ordinance for solid waste garbage service fee continued from August 17th, 2021 City Council meeting. Second readings are pretty normal for a consent calendar. However, this is one that I think ought to be pulled out for separate discussion. Second reading and adoption of ordinance to change the 4-acre site from highway service commercial to high-density residential rezone. I've seen things like this on a consent calendar before. Approve City Hall lobby remodel. Why this is not a potential action item, I don't understand. Approve local transportation claim fund. That's pretty normal. Approve declaration of certain property as surplus and authorizing its disposal. I think we need to pull that out as a separate discussion. I'd like to know what it is that the city plans to dispose of and exactly how they intend to dispose of it. Approve award of agreement for planning services to J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning. Well, given that I didn't see where the city actually sent out a request for proposal, I'd like to know how it is they decide to select this particular contractor. So I think that's worth pulling for a separate discussion myself. Finally, we get to public hearings, and the first public hearing is a resolution to approve the Villages at Main apartment community site plan and design review. And if you know anything about how long these things can go, it could go anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour or even more, just depending on how long the presentation is and how many questions the council has. Now let's take a look at the 2 ordinances that were shoved to the very end of the meeting. Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Livingston adopting a new rate schedule for water services, continued from August 17th, 2021. Resolution and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Livingston adopting a new rate schedule for domestic wastewater service, sewer service, also continued from August 17th, 2021. Your guess is as good as mine as to why these were shoved to the very end of the meeting. Personally, I think public hearings should be moved up, like say right after citizens' comments and the ordinance about water service and the ordinance about domestic wastewater service should be the first 2 on the list. Now let's pull out a few details from that enormous agenda packet. This is for the sidewalk repair on Main and D Street. It's going to cost about $27,000, and the money is going to come out of a transportation fund. Next, the slurry seals project, which is going to be close to $184,000. The major work consisting of furnishing and applying slurry seal and replacing pavement striping and markings on various streets in the city of Livingston. Various streets. Wouldn't you like to see a list of what those various streets are going to be? The slurry seals project will be funded with Measure V and SB1 funding. Moving on to the garbage rates. The staff recommends the city take one of the following actions: adopt the ordinance or postpone solid waste rate implementation. Postpone again. Here's part of the timeline. There is a piece missing, and we'll get into that when we talk a little bit more about water rates. Here is some more of the timeline. Some of us will remember that at the August 17th, 2021 meeting, the city attorney was not prepared for the hearings, and so this was at least part of the reason given for punting these forward again in time. And there's also a note that the current rate study does not address the organic mandates from the state through Senate Bill 1383. And a revised fee study should take into account the impacts of SB 1383 to the solid waste rates, which leads me to wonder if we're going to be scrapping this, starting all over again, and how much it's all going to cost us to finally get this done. On to the second reading of changing the approximately 4-acre site from highway service commercial to high-density residential with a rezone has to do with the proposed Tierra Santa Via's apartment project, an 80-unit affordable apartment project, which will be located right where this star is, and although you can't see it on this map, it is right next to the MID Canal. Now, this is about adopting a resolution to approve the City Hall lobby remodel. The lobby area will be expanded to accommodate personnel representatives from the city's recreation and building departments. Philosophically, I don't have a problem with that, but it would be nice to see plans of what it's supposed to look like and an idea of how long it's going to take to get it done, and how they plan to get it done at only about $27,000. Fiscal impact funds in the Municipal Facilities Impact Fees Fund will be used. Local transportation fund claims are pretty standard. This one is for $14,836. The city plans to use these funds to repave Stephanie Avenue between Davis Street and Campbell Boulevard. Now we get to the declaration of certain property as surplus and authorizing its disposal. My understanding is that in the past we used an independent auction firm. I don't know what we're going to do this time around. It says here that they are going to use Livingston Municipal Code Title I Administrative Chapter 12 Surplus Property. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it seems to me we are creeping towards the dark ages when it comes to transparency here. I mean, not everyone happens to have a copy of the municipal code at their fingertips. And why should we have to look up codes anyway? What is so freaking difficult about telling us in plain language what is going to be done with all the surplus property? Auction it off in the parking lot? Sell it all online? Send it to an independent auction house? What are they going to do? Personally, I think this is ridiculous that a staff report hides behind code instead of telling us straight up what's going to happen. Moving on to adopt a resolution approving award of agreement for planning service to J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning. According to the background, the city is exempt from bidding requirements for the contract of professional or specialized services such as planning services. You can call me skeptical for wanting a little more information, because if the city doesn't need to solicit bids for planning services, I wonder what other service will be handed out without competitive proposals. It says here a proposal from J.B. Anderson Planning was received and deemed qualified. However, if a request for proposals was not sent out by the city, begs the question of how did they know to apply? Okay, they're going to say $15 an hour supposedly, but what we don't know is if we could have done better with another firm. I've heard that just because you can do a thing doesn't mean that you should do a thing. And if there is anything a city should be aiming for, it's more transparency and not less, which is why I don't understand why this wasn't put out for a request for proposal. Since the city knew the contract with the current planner would be up in November, looks to me like there was plenty of time to send out an RFP, say in July or August. Then have the firms who responded present in open session and have the council vote in open session for transparency's sake. But I guess that's just too much to ask for nowadays. Once upon a time, candidates for council would bleat, "Transparency, transparency, transparency, I'm for transparency." Now we seem to be heading into a phase of as little transparency as possible. Next, the resolution to approve the VIAs at Main apartment community. The construction of 480-unit multifamily housing development southeast of the intersection of Peach Avenue and Main Street, which includes adopting an environmental document including a statement of overriding considerations. In terms of time, this means this presentation could be a long one, and the discussion could also be a long one. Here's the project summary, which includes the owner applicant are proposing to develop the 17.3-acre property into a 480-unit residential apartment complex. This complex would consist of 20 three-story buildings, each with 24 units, 8 units per floor, ranging from 1 to 3 bedrooms. Towards the very tail end of what looks like to be a very long agenda, we have the ordinance establishing new rates for water service continued from August 17th, 2021 City Council meeting. Remember, because the city attorney wasn't prepared? Anyway, recommendation, staff recommends that the City Council take one of the following actions. Waive the first reading establishing new rates for water service effective November 4th, 2021, or postpone the water rate implementation. Here is a timeline about workshops and hearing postponements. However, it does leave out what happened during a special City Council meeting that was held in January of 2020. This slide talks about the City Council continuing it to the August 17th, 2021 meeting and a second continuation to the September 21st, 2021 City Council meeting for further discussion, and give the attorney a chance to prepare at $375 per hour. I can't help but wonder. It also mentions a revised study, so I'm wondering, are we going to scrap this and start all over? Analysis, reason for increase in rates. Number 1, install identified capital improvements that will improve water quality. Translation, clean up TCP contamination and get us into compliance with the state. Number 2, fully fund the operating costs of the system, leaving more funding available for other essential city services. Translation, prevent robbing the general fund to pay the water system's bills. Oops, that should be number 3, but I think you know what I mean. So, about that special meeting held on January 29th, 2020. Present were Mayor Pro Tem Raul Garcia, Councilmember Maria Batista Soto, Councilmember Juan Aguilar, and Councilmember Gagandeep Kang. On the agenda as a discussion and potential action item was to receive direction from the council to initiate the Proposition 218 notice process for the proposed water and wastewater increases. The consultant gave a PowerPoint presentation discussing the reasons for the cost increase, projected revenue, requirements, cost of service, study results, and projected cash balance for utilities, water, domestic wastewater, and sanitation. You will notice it was motion second Garcia Batista to initiate the Proposition 218 notice process for the proposed water and wastewater rate increases, and the motion carried 4-0-1 by the roll call vote. I know they got Samra and Garcia mixed up as who was absent, but it was a 4-1 vote: Batista, Aguilar, Kang, and Garcia. So what's my point about bringing this up? It's to show that these 4 members of the City Council knew since at least January 2020 that the city was going to need millions of dollars to get our water system compliance with the state for TCP, and that most of that money would have to be borrowed. The very last hearing on a very long meeting agenda is the new rates for wastewater service, where the staff recommends that the City Council take all the following actions: adopt a resolution adopting a new rate schedule for domestic wastewater, waive the first reading and introduce the ordinance establishing rates for domestic wastewater, and postpone the sewer rate implementation. I'm going to wrap this up with a $29,956 bill for July from White-Brenner. This is from the warrant register, and it shows the total of $29,956. I asked for and received a copy of the invoice, which had 4 pages. However, the copy I was given did not contain the breakdown of what tasks were done and the number of billable hours charged that I was expecting to receive. There were only 4 grand totals: general municipal of $3,571, HR, which I'm assuming is human resources, $6,435, a thing called PRA for $480, and 2021 recall for a whopping $19,470. Now, I was expecting more details than just these grand totals, and I had already sent an email to the city attorney in August asking about invoices, but I never received a reply. And I do remember when Tom Hallinan and Doug White interviewed back in July. At that time, they made it seem like getting redacted copies of invoices would be no big deal. However, it took a few emails back and forth with the interim city manager before I got the response that redacted copies would eventually be provided. What those redacted invoices will look like is anybody's guess. One of the things I'm hoping to find out is how much is being billed at $200 an hour, or $275 an hour, or even $375 an hour, and who actually did the work, the attorney or the paralegals. Photo credits. Any views or opinions I express on these videos are my own and do not represent the views or opinions of the City Council or City of Livingston. Unless, of course, I am using direct quotes or video from City Council or other public meetings, then it's pretty obvious whose opinion is whose. Copies of source documentation available upon request.